That was 12.1 miles, averaging 7 minutes and 41 seconds per mile, going for my midweek medium long run. That was actually yesterday's run. It was my first time on the Great Western Trail in Illinois, which is a 17-mile former railway trail. It's mostly crushed limestone and gravel, and it was also mostly shaded, which was really nice. And it was just a beautiful trail to run on. It actually connects to the Illinois Prairie Path, which is a trail that I was on just a couple days ago on my run. The main reason that I wanted to get on the Great Western for my run yesterday, besides making my goal of hitting a different trail every single day this week, the main reason was because of the crushed limestone. Especially now that I'm running higher mileage, it's more important that I'm getting on that soft surface as much as I can. It's just going to decrease my likelihood of getting injured. So I really enjoyed running on the Great Western yesterday. It was a great medium long run, and I look forward to the next time that I can run on the Great Western. I'll probably go to a different spot on the trail so that I can hopefully eventually run the entire thing and experience the other parts of the trail. What I'm talking about today is a related topic of staying injury-free, and I'll be going over my list of hip mobility exercises that I do twice a week that help me stay injury-free. So the first exercise is single leg raises. This is pretty straightforward. But for all of these exercises, you want to go not as slow as possible, but you want to take your time going up and down. The slower you go, the more work it will be for your muscles. And by the end of it, you might be a little sore. They're simple exercises, but they are very good in strengthening your hips and your ankles, which is very important for us as runners to stay strong in those areas to help us stay injury-free. So for all of these exercises, it's very important to keep your body under control and pretty relaxed. You don't want to be making any fast movements. You want them all to be relatively slow, like I said. That's going to do a better job of actually activating the muscle group that you're targeting and strengthening it the longer the exercise goes on. So I do about 10 to 15 reps. I usually do 12 reps of all of these, but you can do anywhere from 10 to 15 depending on what level you're at, how good your hip strength is, I guess. If that feels too easy, you could go a little bit more than that, or you could add some weights. But I think 12 is a pretty good number to still activate the muscle group well, strengthen it, but not feel too overworked and not feel too tired after the exercises. So the second exercise here is side leg raises. Again, it's pretty straightforward. Laying in a straight line on your side and slowly lifting the upper leg up a little bit, not too high, but keeping it straight, and then lowering it back down towards your other leg, but not letting it touch so that that muscle group in your hip stays activated even when you're lowering it down. And then, like I said, repeat 12 times for both legs. The next one that I'm doing is hip bridges. These look a little awkward, but if you can get past that, it's a great exercise for activating your glutes and strengthening your glutes. It's also kind of your hip flexors a little bit, but this one is definitely mostly glutes, a little bit of hamstrings maybe depending on your strength. And this one, again, is pretty straightforward. You're just keeping your body straight, but lifting your hips up off the ground and keeping your legs nice and sturdy on the ground. This one would be pretty easy to add weight to if you wanted to hold any sort of weight on top of your body, like in front of your hips, and that would increase the difficulty, increase the strengthening of the exercise, but you can also just do it without weight. I usually don't use a weight, and it still does a good job of activating the muscle group and strengthening it. The next exercise is clams, which will be mostly working the side of your hip. or the back of your hip, kind of towards your glutes. And for this one, it's really important not to let your hips fall too far forward or back. You want to stay right on your side, and keeping your top foot on top of your bottom foot. You're slowly lifting up your knee, and you should feel that activation towards the back of your hip for each one of these. This is another one where you could add resistance. You could put a small band around your legs, right above your knees, and that would add some resistance and make it harder. So if the regular version feels a little too easy, that's something you could do to increase the resistance and increase the difficulty. The next one here is probably either the hardest or the second hardest, I would say, in the entire exercise list. This is single leg hip bridge. So it's combining single leg raises and hip bridges, and it is kind of difficult. It might take some time. You might be shaking towards the end of each one of these, but it's very important that you try to stay as controlled and relaxed as possible to really target the correct muscle groups. So you're keeping one foot down on the ground and lifting up the other one straight, just like a single leg raise, while also bringing both of your hips up. And you don't want to tip too far one way or the other. You want your hips to remain pretty level as you go up. For this one, you might need to use your arms on the ground to kind of stabilize yourself. Like I said, you might be shaking and possibly tipping a little bit, depending on how good your balance is. So using your arms on the ground to keep yourself steady is something that helps. This next one is called fire hydrants, and this is another one that looks a little awkward, but it's one of the best exercises for your hips, because it's moving it in a way that a lot of runners don't usually move their hips unless they do exercises like this one. So this is definitely one of my favorite exercises on this list. So you keep your hands down, steady on the ground. You don't want to let your elbows cave in at all, and slowly lift one leg that's bent up to as close to 90 degrees as you can get. I don't do a perfect job of doing this in the video. My hip mobility could definitely be better, but that's what I'm working on. So lift it up to as close to 90 degrees as you can, and then slowly lower it back down. This is one that might burn a little bit in that muscle, towards the back of your muscle, towards the back of your hip again, towards your glute, because like I said, we don't use this muscle group too often. We don't do that movement too often, which makes it one of the best exercises, because it's strengthening an area in our hips that we usually don't target when we run. The last exercise on my list is runner touches. So this one, like the single leg hip bridges, is either the hardest or the second hardest in my opinion. This one is the most important in my opinion, because it's the most movement, and as you can see, it's the most like running in all of these exercises, the most that actually resembles running. So this is the most important in my opinion, and definitely the most important to take slowly, even slower than I'm doing in this video if you can. You stand up in a running position, kind of frozen, and slowly bend down to touch the ground like I'm doing, and then slowly come back up. This one will be tough if you're not great with balance. When I switch over to my right leg, you can see that I kind of falter because my balance is better on my left leg than my right leg. I'm not sure exactly why that is. Even though I'm a righty, my balance is better on my left leg. Maybe that's how it works. I don't really know. Yeah, this one is very important to go slowly, take your time, and go through the entire movement. This one is actually probably a little bit more of an ankle mobility exercise rather than a hip mobility, but bringing that leg up, driving your knee up, also engages your hips for this one. So like I said, this one kind of incorporates the most amount of muscle groups, and for that reason it's my favorite, but it is also one of the hardest, like I said. So you might find yourself kind of tipping over. You can use a wall or a pole to hold on to if you want to, but try your best not to, because it's going to work your ankle mobility more and your balance more if you're not holding on to anything. But this one is the most important to take slowly. Your ankles will probably be burning a little bit by the end, but that's the goal of the exercise, is to work your balance and your mobility. So that's the list. There are a few others here that I do sometimes. I don't always do them. They do well activating the muscle groups as well in your hips, and they are good exercises. I just didn't include them because I don't usually do them, but they are still good exercises. So those are the 7 mobility exercises that I do. I usually do these twice a week. I would recommend doing it every week to every runner. If you're more advanced or running higher mileage, I would recommend doing it twice a week. Like I said, this is just going to decrease your risk of injury, and it's going to strengthen your hips, glutes, and hamstrings the most, which are usually the weakest parts of a runner, which are the most important parts to strengthen, obviously. So I did not make up this list. All of these I got from high school, running in high school and college. I'm just sharing it with you. Hopefully can help you stay healthy and injured less. So that's all I have for today. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.